1340 KDLM Lakes Live. I'm your host, Jake Judd. Pleasure to be with you as always on this Monday. 48 degrees here in the Lakes area, but at least it's a bright, sunny sky. The wind is relatively calm. We'll get you a complete look at the weather forecast coming up here in just a few minutes. But my next guest is a relationship expert. She's from Los Angeles, California, or at least is based out of there. She's an international speaker, a best-selling author. In fact, she's written 19 books, a business consultant, and one of the top authorities in our country on the subject of relationships. And if you want to know how important matchmaking is, the last Nobel Peace Prize was handed out very early this morning. It went to two Americans for their ability to be matchmakers, not only in social settings, but in some other scientific settings as well. And they use a lot of probably the same techniques our guest does here, too. She's got a great new book out that's one of the #1 selling books right now. It's been launched with at Barnes & Noble. You can probably get it at also Amazon.com, I'm sure, wherever finer books are sold. It's called The Matchmaker of the Century. Please welcome here to 1340 KDLM Lakes Live, matchmaker and author, Hellen Chen. Hellen, thank you very much for taking time to talk with me today.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you for being here.
No problem. Let's get right into it. Hellen, you've been a great expert in this field. You've written many, many books. Your new one, The Matchmaker of the Century, is out. Why did you decide to write this book, and how did you become a matchmaker? That doesn't sound to me like a job you can just walk down the street, see an application sign for in the window, and sign up for it. So how did you get into this field?
Well, I actually like to mind people's business. That was me since I was a teenager, and it's really fun to see people in love. And we all have experience in our life. When you see people fall in love, that really make you tears out, and so touching and so beautiful. And I like that feeling, and I keep myself seeing that every day. So I keep going doing this, and year after year, I just become expert on this area.
And then the decision to write your 19th book, The Matchmaker of the Century. You've got several others out there, too, and we can talk about those in a moment. But what made you decide that you needed another book, and what is so special about this particular book that you wanted to put in there?
Well, I have so many areas, but they're all talking about the relationship, about parenting, about this romantic and fall in love. So I talk about divorce. I talk about how to become to really in love. I'm talking about how to really making yourself a better spouse, and that kind of things in every angle. And I'm talking about how do you fail and why this happens. So I have so many people in reality I helping, I consult, so I put them every really true story into this book also, so people can see, you are not alone. You're a problem everybody actually facing. And it's very simple, so everybody can learn how to fall in love and have a better relationship.
1340 KDLM Lakes Live. I'm your host, Jake Judd. We're talking to relationship expert and author Hellen Chen, who has got a new book out called The Matchmaker of the Century, sold where finer books are sold. And Hellen, in your book, The Matchmaker of the Century, you say real freedom comes after a person gets married. Most people would think the opposite of that. The single life is freedom. So why do you say there's more freedom in marriage?
Okay. Usually people thinking about the freedom is like I can go home anytime I want, I can do anything I want, I can drink, I can have more people, friends, and whatever I like to do. They call it freedom. But when we're really talking about the freedom, we need to have a home. We need to have the real relationship. We need to have somebody we're in love with. And when you really have this trust, then you really have a freedom after that. So you can produce, and you can thinking of your idea, and then you can do anything you want. You can go out and fight and produce and really making your dream come true. Then you can go home. And that's called freedom. Not like, you become homeless and then nobody loves you, and then you say you have a freedom. That's really not true, right?
Sure. No, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, but you might have your freedom, but loneliness could be its own prison within itself as opposed to relationship. Maybe that's a different way of looking at it. But a question I kind of got follow-up to that I was thinking is, how do you know when you're in love? I mean, you probably made these matches over and over again. So when you're trying to match people up, when you're looking for that, how do you know something's going to fit? What are you looking for? And how would that individual person know if they are in love, if they are going to be a match?
Well, the first of all, when you look at somebody and you feel for them and you know their idea, you know their feeling, you want to close them, you want to talk to them, and you actually feel the affinity for the people. And that's very, very special. And I'm thinking as long as we grow in this world, everybody experience that. Because even when you're in the elementary school, you already know the feeling. You meet a guy, you meet a woman, and you feel good about the person. And that is just enough element. And then after that, you need to develop. You need to learn how to communicate. You need to know how you interest another person. So when you were talking about fitting or not fitting, it's not just like, somebody like you sit in the car and you feel the chair fitting you. It's not like that kind of fitting. You need to grow into it. You need to learn because everybody changing after 5, 10, 20 years. So you cannot thinking like, we want to fit each other 20 years later because you even don't know 20 years yourself become what kind of person. So it's very important when you really like somebody, you make it go right. That's what is important about. You really, really need to learn how to communicate so you could understand each other. And because you have ability to understand each other, that's what making you fitting each other.
1340 KDLM Lakes Live. I'm your host, Jake Judd. 49 degrees here in the Lakes area, 1053. We're talking with Hellen Chen. She is a world-renowned author and matchmaker, author of the new best-selling book, The Matchmaker of the Century, her 19th book on relationships. She's also been a business consultant on numerous TV and radio shows and magazine, newspaper interviews as well, and she's joining us here this morning in the program. And Helen, I got to ask you then, in your book, you say, in your book, of course, The Matchmaker of the Century, you state that dating really comes after marriage. What do you mean by that? Because most people have generally a pretty long courtship before they want to get married.
Well, everybody know we dating, and then what happened? I thinking after dating, 95% people heartbroken. That's what happened. And everybody know that, but they still believe you should date because they have this thinking like, if I don't date, I don't know you. So everybody dating and dating and dating. We know so many people dating for 2 years, 6 years, 5 years, and then at the end they didn't marry. And then what happened? They separate, and then they're heartbroken. So if you dating before marry, they're called heartbroken. But if you dating after you marry, that is called forever. It's beautiful. You see, the both sides has a dangers. The both sides has a difficulty, have a barriers. But one way can go to some other place, and the other side you just gonna fail. So you have to date only after you marry, and that's best.
1340 KDLM Lakes Live. I'm your host, Jake Judd. We're talking here with Hellen Chen. She is a world-renowned author and matchmaking professional. She's got a new book out called The Matchmaker of the Century. And Helen, I got to ask you, we are obviously coming out of a recession right now in our country, slowly but surely. But because of the economic slowdown, I've heard that many people have either postponed marriage or having children because of the economics. What are your feelings when you hear people do that? Is that a wise idea in your mind? Likewise, I hear a lot of people that will put marriage or a family on hold for their career. Are either one of those a good idea in your mind, or how should people think and approach those decisions in life?
Well, bad idea, because the one person can leave, two people, of course, can leave better. Because 1 + 1 is better, stronger, more than 2. So if you one person, you can leave, you could eat. Well, you can marry because you can live the same way. If you don't have the relationship, you still continue live, right? So if you have a two-person, it's stronger because you feel more cooperation and more relationship, more encouragement, and you need this type of support. So it's in this type of a special economy problem time, you more need a relationship because you grew up the people stronger, have a family, and you have a children, so you feel hope, so you feel have a future. You more have energy to produce. But if you're alone, you're very easy to go into the TV, you go into the even drug, you even go to headache. But if you have a family, somebody support you. So for this economy problem, the best way is you marry and you do have a children. Because we can see in the history, the poor people time actually produce the better in the future for the economy and have a better survival.
1340 KDLM Lakes Live. I'm your host, Jake Judd. And Helen, we're getting towards the end of our time here, but a couple questions I want to ask you. One is a pretty politically charged question. I know you're out there in California, and this has been a big issue out there for a number of years. Here in Minnesota, we've got a constitutional amendment that's going to be voted on in just a few weeks here by the citizens of Minnesota to ban gay marriage or homosexual marriage in our Constitution. Currently, it's against the law in Minnesota. I know California has gone through similar debates, similar arguments. But in your profession as a relationship matchmaking expert, have you come across homosexual relationships before? And in your matchmaking experience, how do you view those? Are they equal to a man-woman relationship when it comes to all the dynamics and the important things a human being needs?
Well, I'm not in the expert for the law, but what I want to say is in the relationship. So for you, whatever the relationship is, both person's culture. It's you and the other person who in love with, and you both have to have the relationship, and you both have to agree. It's not like how other people say, how other people decide. Very, very important is for both of you can communicate, and you want to have a family, and you have a trust. And it's more important is both of you in love. It's not like what the law say, or what other people say, or what a mother-in-law say. You know, it's just what both of you say. So I'm not in the law's viewpoint talking about this, but I'm in the relationship as a viewpoint. You know, everybody has a right and to respect when you fall in love, and that is the real things between you and the other person. So I think it's more important whether your relationship continue or not, and that is more important.
1340 KDLM Lakes Live. Helen, before you go, I got to ask you, though, you're a relationship expert, matchmaking expert, so I'm sure you're well aware of the numbers. Around half of marriages in our country here in the United States ends in divorce. More people, it seems like, are living out of wedlock, you know, especially young couples with children, maybe without. Does marriage mean anything anymore? Has it just become kind of a legal arrangement between people? And what effect could marriage have as an institution in our society if it isn't being held as important anymore?
Well, marriage is most important, one of the most important things in our life, because without this marriage, you really don't really so strong. Your heart don't feel strong. You feel weak because you don't have anybody to love and trust, and also you need to love someone, and you also need to be loved. So it's very important. You have to be wanted, and you have to go through. So the people who facing divorce, they quit too early. You know, they really not spend the energy and time to learn, because marriage is a subject. Relationship is a technique. You need to learn them. You need to willing to build up. And it's a very, very strong for how the relationship do to people. That's why divorce can hurting people very deep. And that is why making the society not happy. So we need to promote and learn how to have a happy marriage. And the truth is, you could learn to be real good wife and good husband, and you do has the right to have the happy marriage. And you need to put up with that, and you need to learn, and that is the hope. We need to learn this, and everybody can have the happy marriage.
My guest has been Hellen Chen. She is the author of the book, The Matchmaker of the Century, her 19th book. It's on the New York Times bestsellers list. Go ahead, get yourself a copy. Barnes & Nobles, I know, has it, as well as probably finer bookstores all over the country. Hellen, thank you very much for your time this morning on the program. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.